For those who have seen the first episode of what I'm calling Season 3 of Tales of the Rails, you may be aware of the more in-depth storylines I'm taking the series in, and while it's still in development, I cannot wait to show you where it all goes. Another thing I'll be doing while making these videos is custom showcases. You remember when I used to make those? One of which became my most popular videos, and then I stopped making them for like 40 years because I got bored of them. Well, guess what? We're doing another one, and a couple of others in the future, so without further ado, Percy has always been a rather mysterious character in terms of origin. Well, of course, we all know that he was purchased by Sir Topham Hatt in a workshop in the early 30s, but his basis isn't really known, with Audrey just stating that he is a hodgepodge, aka an engine that's made up of several bits from other engines. But that isn't going to stop Thomas fans from questioning what the hell this is. And most found an answer in preserved Great Western number 1338. Sure, it looks a little different, but the overall shape is there, I swear. But some took it a step further, looking at 1338's brother, 1339, who worked with him in Cardiff and was cut up in the early 30s, and said, yeah, that's Percy. I really like that idea, aside from the fact that while Percy is a dumb naive child, he would be as old as Edward if he were truly that engine. Or maybe he doesn't know that he's that engine. Almost like he suffered from memory loss brought upon by an accident that damaged him so severely that he had to be basically rebuilt from the ground up, which explains why he has so many differences to Great Western number 1339. And it also seems to have affected his vocabulary, since he doesn't know what a railway inspector is. Seriously, what's up with that?
What's a railway tester?
It's also to do with the memory thing. It's all the memory thing, the incident that changed who he was as an engine. Oh my god. The pieces, they're all coming together. It all makes sense now. You know where I'm going with this. I made a custom out of that. The basis, for this custom was an old Trackmaster 2 talking Percy I had lying around. I took apart the chassis and basically gutted the motor and sound chip out of him so he can essentially never run under his own power again. It wasn't too big of a deal though, his motor was already dead and it came with the nice side effect of making him a freewheeler. I then had to saw off the bunker with a pair of scissors, custom Trackmaster 2 Arthur style, since the real 1339 didn't have one. Thankfully I did not get a blister on my thumb due to my unfortunate curse of being left-handed, and proceeded to sand down the area with a couple of nail files in order to make it flush. I used glue and a couple of pieces of paper towel roll in order to cover up the huge hole in the back. Looking back, I probably should have used paper for a smoother texture, but at this point, I was beyond the point of caring. On to painting and weathering. I used black Sharpie to fill in the wheels as it didn't feel like dismantling an entirely different chassis just to harvest it for its wheels, before moving on to the body, which I painted using an acrylic dark green. I then went in and filled several parts with other colors, using photos of 1339 as a reference. I then moved on to lettering, which was a time-consuming process to say the least. I basically had to draw out the lettering on the boiler with a pencil before carefully going over it with yellow paint using a thin brush, which I would argue would make for a more suspenseful scene than deactivating a bomb. I then found out that 1338 and 9 didn't even wear the lettering at the time, so that was painful to figure out. The number plates were done in the same way, except on a thin piece of paper that I then glued onto each side of the cab. During filming, I actually ripped a number plate off as I couldn't be bothered to make an entirely new one, just to be used in that scene. Don't worry, it's retouched and repainted. I also glued a Lego stud on the whistle to look like a safety valve, even though the actual one was on the dome, but whatever. I had to do some customization to the face, namely drawing the eyebrows, which I decided to give a smug look, as I imagined just like Duck, he was very proud of his Great Western heritage. Actually, it's because I screwed up one of the eyebrows and said screw it. Then it was time to weather, which I did using black paint. I dipped my paintbrush into the paint, got rid of almost all the paint on a paper towel, spiking the paintbrush in the process, and began putting it on areas that I think would make sense, namely on the top of the boiler and in little crevices. I went a bit hard on the weathering, as I imagine despite Duck's claims of the Great Western taking pride in every engine, being a common shunting engine, 1339 is barely maintained, which, in my opinion, provides nice foreshadowing as to what they do to 1339 later on. After that was done, the model was complete. This was honestly a really fun project for me, and it's not likely to be the last, as several other characters had pretty interesting lives before Sodor. This is Liam Keenan, and that's about it.